thank you for joining us on Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. The idea of studying abroad programs is as old as education itself. Ancient Greek and Roman people often traveled to other countries to learn about different cultures and vice versa. Skip ahead a dozen centuries or so as universities began to establish branches outside their home countries. For today's college students, spending a semester abroad has become another class in the college curriculum. In recent commentary for VT Digger, today's guest called semester abroad programs the irreplaceable value of global experience within a liberal arts education. Bill Falls has led UVM's College of Arts and Sciences as its dean since 2016, a model of the teacher-scholar that UVM epitomizes. In his time at UVM, Falls has taught undergraduate courses as well as maintained an active research program before leading the largest college at UVM. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
We're happy to have you. And then I mentioned that VT Digger column, and you
Yes.
said that it was after a visit to Mexico City. So talk about that.
Oh, I went down to Mexico City on a bit of a pilgrimage and just fell in love with the culture. It was amazing. The food, the people. And reflecting on that, when I returned, I was like, we need to tell our community about the value of experiencing other cultures.
And I studied abroad as well, as we were talking a little bit before.
Right.
I studied in Ireland, and you were saying that you studied as well in Scotland.
Studied in Scotland, yes, yes.
And so you don't have to convince me at all, but what are some things that families should consider before heading out, other than maybe just the budget?
I think the budget's an important one, and we're working hard at UVM to make it affordable and accessible for all of our students. But also, I think it's important for families to think about the kind of experience a student wants. The traditional study abroad are a semester or a year long, but I also think there are opportunities for shorter term study as well. I think it's important for students as they're thinking about study abroad to talk to their academic advisor. How does study abroad fit into the curriculum? Because the thing we don't want to do is to delay graduation. We want study abroad to amplify the work that you're doing. And it's also important to talk to faculty. Faculty have international experiences, they have international colleagues. They can tell you about the regions, they can tell you about the universities, and make sure that your choice of study abroad fits with your goals and desires.
So other than making sure all of the academic stuff lines up, is there other research you'd recommend, maybe into just the environment you're going to?
Absolutely. I mean, some students will want to be immersed in a place where they can learn the language, and I think that's really important, but you have to know what you're getting into. I also think it's important to think about sort of where you might want to travel when you're there. So if you're going to South Africa, pretty much the African continent is where you're going to travel, or think about New Zealand or Europe.
So if I want to go somewhere that's Spanish speaking primarily, do I have to have a Spanish prerequisite?
You could study in a Spanish university in English. Not something I would recommend. I think it's really important to be immersed in that language. But generally, we require students to take a foreign language, and hopefully they fall in love with it, and that launches them into regions of the world where they can take Spanish-speaking courses.
Sure, and I bet you come back and you're wowing your next Spanish teacher.
That is so true. I mean, what we hear from our Spanish colleagues, Spanish faculty colleagues, is that students come back changed. They come back changed, and
Wow.
I believe that. I came back changed.
Sure, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And you had already mentioned some shorter terms than maybe a year or a semester. So
Right.
what do those week-long programs look like?
Oh, these are wonderful programs. They're run during the winter break, so between the fall and spring semesters, as well as in the summer. And it's an opportunity for a student to go with a faculty member and maybe a handful, 8 or 10 other UVM students, to various regions and study in depth. For example, we offer a 3-week-long course in Ecuador to study sustainability. This summer, we're launching one with a faculty member from our classics department to study ancient Rome and the politics of ancient Rome. I mean, these are amazing opportunities to have this rigorous academic experience, but in country, on site.
Yeah, that's incredible. And if you're going for a longer period of time, something you might battle a little bit with is homesickness. What's your advice for that?
Yeah, I was homesick when I went to Scotland. I think it's important to remember that even though you're studying at another university, you're still part of their home university community. So those resources are available to you. And if you think homesickness might be something that your student or might experience, I'd really recommend one of these shorter term experiences to start with, the 1 or 2 or 3 week experience is probably a good way to sort of get used to traveling, get used to being on your own and in a different place.
And studying abroad is a great opportunity. It's also kind of become more popular even just in culture. So is it kind of an expectation that today's students are going to study abroad?
I don't know if I would call it an expectation, but highly recommended. And let me tell you why. I mean, one of the hallmarks of a liberal arts education is critical thinking, and there's just no doubt that being immersed in a different culture, beginning to understand that culture, just really deepens critical thinking. But I think more importantly, this is a global world, right? And being exposed to other cultures kind of helps you develop that sort of sense of what the world is like, what issues the world is experiencing. And those issues cross national borders. And as citizens of the world, I think we really need to be deeply engaged. And to be really good, active citizens of the world, those global experiences are indispensable.
And it's easy to see study abroad program maybe from the outside entirely, or somebody maybe about to go on a study abroad program as almost a semester-long vacation to kind of see the world. But there are also classes involved, of course.
There are classes involved, and they're pretty rigorous. So we only send our students to the best universities, and we expect that they need to earn the equivalent of a C or better for those courses to transfer back. So while we encourage students to explore and get to know people, develop friendships, visit other places, we can't forget the academics. And even in our own study abroad programs, the ones that UVM offers, these are offered by our excellent faculty. And the programs are as rigorous as the courses we would offer on campus.
Absolutely, and you recommended before we started maybe not focusing on the classes in your major when you're...
Yes. One of the mistakes I made when I studied in Scotland as a psychology major is I took all psychology classes. And it was wonderful, but I really lament not studying sociology and the culture there, or history, or geography, or these things that would have helped me learn a little bit more about Scotland, the Scottish people.
And we talked a little bit before as well about the value of seeing a different class through a kind of an international lens, maybe how a different country sees a piece of history or even something more technical. So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, studying abroad, we have opportunities to explore the different cultures, and even students who are interested in sort of STEM fields and the technical fields, we have an issue there where their majors are kind of scaffolded and lockstepped. There's still ways, I don't want those students to feel discouraged from studying abroad. There are still ways in which they can continue on in their major, or maybe do one of these shorter term experiences. That's been one of the things that I've really wanted to focus on, is how do we get our STEM majors to have these study abroad experiences.
Yeah, really an opportunity for everybody.
Yes.
And there are several different study abroad programs at every university. So what does UVM offer, and does it differ depending on where you're going?
So we have an excellent office of international education that will work with students to help identify particularly the semester and year-long programs that suit their interests and curiosities. But we also offer our own programs, and one that I think I'm really proud about is created by our current interim president and former provost, called UVM Go. And this is a 3-day, 5-day, 1-week experience for students prior to arriving at UVM.
Wow, so you can start so early.
You can start very early. Even before you take your first UVM class, you can have this experience with other UVM students in international sites. And we've offered UVM Go experiences in Montreal and Vancouver and Iceland, in Costa Rica, and we're continuing to expand those. The idea being that UVM is a global university, and we should start by right from the very beginning in helping students understand their place in the world and the opportunities for them to explore the world.
Absolutely, and an incredible welcome to UVM, being able to see so much.
Be so much with other UVM students and with our amazing faculty.
Absolutely, you come back with some close friends, I bet.
You do, yes.
And do you think when you're studying abroad, is it 50-50 experiencing the culture and education? What do you think the split is?
Oh, that's a great question, Jolie. I think it's a hard one, because I think the two are so intertwined. I'm sure that you had that experience in Ireland, right? There's the academics, and if you choose your courses, as I suggest you should, you're learning about the culture there, but there's also getting to know the people you're living with, and your friends, and where they're from, and what their experiences are, as well as learning about and exploring the community. I think it's really hard to tease them apart. I think they're one and the same.
Absolutely, and now you're going to have some really popular programs and then some of a little more out there programs.
Right.
So why don't we start with what's the most popular? Where are people going?
I think people are going to Europe. I think Europe is accessible, and one of the things about Europe is they speak English really well there. So having facility in a foreign language generally is not a barrier, although I do recommend studying foreign language and persisting. It's so important. I also think that students are wanting to experience Central and South America. We're beginning to expand our offerings in Africa, and I believe it's this coming year we'll have our first called UVM In, which is kind of a cohort-based experience where a group of students will travel to a particular university and explore that university, and we're starting one in South Africa, as well as South Korea.
Wow, that'll be great. So are those some examples of places that are a little bit more off the beaten path when it comes to travel?
I think so. I don't know that it's pretty popular to necessarily think you're going to end up in South Africa or South Korea. So these are opportunities to sort of broaden that interest.
And when you studied in Scotland, was there somewhere now that you've seen this wealth of opportunity, is there somewhere else you wish you'd gone?
I wish I would have gone to Asia. I think the idea of studying in South Korea, or this summer we'll be taking a group of students to Beijing. That's an area of the world I've not explored, and I think as a perhaps more mature adult, had I had that maturity at 20 years old, I would have explored Asia.
Sure. And have you been back to Scotland since?
I have several times.
Nice.
I've hiked. It's a beautiful country.
And recently UVM introduced 2 core global citizenship course requirements.
Yes.
So why don't you talk about that and kind of what this adds to the experience?
So UVM underwent sort of a whole change in our core requirements for all students, and we added global citizenship. And again, this is the idea behind sort of study abroad as well, that students need to understand the world, and they need to understand their place in the world. And these courses are sort of, a course-based effort to help students understand what the world is like, what the world's issues are, what the opportunities are, and what their place is in it.
Sure, and a requirement before you go
And
abroad,
a requirement, and a requirement before you graduate, yes.
All right, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, thank you.
And that closes the gate on today's program. I want to thank the crew behind the scenes here at WCIX. I'm Jolie Whitney. This is Across the Fence. Have a good one.